All right, we are good to begin, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
All yours.
The October 1 meeting of the City Landmark Commission order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Berkey,
Here.
Mr. Lawrence,
Here.
Mr. Zuloff,
Here.
Mr. Galea,
Here.
Mr. Griffiths,
Here.
Commissioner Meinzer,
Here.
and Mr. Nagel will not be attending today, and 6 are in attendance.
Thank you. First item is our September 16 minutes. Do we have any changes? If not, may I have a motion to accept?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The second?
Second.
Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Okay, minutes approved. Next item is our State Theater update. Mr. Horsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I did want to give the commission a quick update on where the theater is in their reconstruction process. There's not a lot of significant things to report at this point, but there are just a couple things. As I believe some of you may know, I've been serving on a subcommittee of the board called for the rebuilding of the theater as the city representative. So I've been part of those conversations and part of the process to get things moving. The capping of the auditorium is currently underway. That should be wrapped up by the first week of December. And so the north portion of the Jackson Street parking lot is currently closed off for that process, just to make sure that the interior is protected from the elements for the winter season. So far, the project's been going very, very well with timeline and budget. The committee did hear presentations last week from 3 very reputable architectural firms, a couple of them from across the country, about making a pitch to be the architect for the rebuilding of the theater. In the coming weeks, that committee will be making a recommendation to the board, and the board will be entering into contract within the coming weeks or month to begin the phasing of rebuilding. We don't know exactly what that process will look like yet, but once that architecture firm's in place, I'm sure there'll be a process to have the city and this commission involved with the future planning for the theater. But there's definitely a strong desire to maintain all the historic elements that are still in existence, but how can any new additions blend in modern, with modern architecture? And so look forward to those discussions, but hopefully within the next month or two, that process can commence. And once that happens, we'll make sure to invite the State Theater Executive Director Chris back with any updates as necessary. That's all I have for updates about the State Theater. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can to the best of my ability, if anyone from the commission has any.
Just a thought, Tom. I know members of our old House Guild board have asked about fundraisers for the theater. I'm wondering if, when you talk to them next time, if they've thought about, when the time comes, if they have any maybe artifacts, historical artifacts of the theater that need some attention, refurbishing. It might be an opportunity to get members of the community, different organizations involved to fund some of that.
Absolutely. I suspect there's been some conversations about those, and I know there's definitely lots of elements of pieces that have been saved that may not be able to be reused, but maybe want to be on display. And I think that's a great idea to engage as many organizations that believe in that type of mission as possible. So that's a good thing I'll definitely pass along.
Anything from any other members? Any questions? Okay, thanks, Tom. Moving on, we have 2 applications for certificates of appropriateness appropriateness this afternoon. The first being 138 East Market. Mr. Horst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have the applicant, Mr. Ryan Bickley, on the call as well, who can, I'm sure, add anything to this presentation or answer any specific questions any members of the commission may have. As you guys may remember from the June meeting, this commission did approve certificates of appropriateness already, but this is, again, just some background on the building. Was originally constructed in around 1910. Its status is a non-contributing structure to our downtown historic district, primarily just because its facade has been dramatically altered so much over the years that very little of its original historic fabric remains intact. This is current condition, a photo taken earlier in the year of what the facade looks like. We approved new windows as the commission. We recommended as staff new windows for the building previously. This new application involves painting the wall a gray color, navy blue, and a white along the trim of the windows, as you can see here, and then new black metal panels over the tile under the storefront windows. And to go back, if you look under the storefront windows, you can see some of the tile that's currently there, which is not in great shape. So this will be covering that. Staff thinks all these changes are appropriate. We recommend approval of the certificate of appropriateness and are just happy to see investment in the exterior of this, both interior and exterior of this building. So that concludes my comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions from staff's perspective.
Do we have questions or comments from our members?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
A couple of things raise an eyebrow. The metal over the old tile at the base. I'm mildly concerned it doesn't specify what metal, but either aluminum or steel would be likely to get rusty pretty quickly, not to mention dent, because of salt. So I'm mildly concerned. It's sort of their problem, but I'm mildly worried about the durability and longevity of that improvement. Ceramic tiles are pretty cheap and might easily go over the substrates there. I don't know if they've considered something that might resemble stone. I don't think the color's that important, provided it's on the palette, of the design review guidelines. The other eyebrow raiser is navy blue and white trim. I'm not sure. It looks like what we're pointing to is navy blue for the keystones and white around the surrounded simulated stone. That front, when it was done, was probably approved because it was simulated stone with those colors. White's pretty much discouraged and not on the palette for design review guidelines. And the navy blue, it looks. I think I don't know if we're picking up a theme somewhere, the Sandusky theme or something, which I love that, except that it might not really fit the design review guidelines the way I understand them, and I think in the long run, the owner community might be happier with something that resembles colors that resemble the stone that's supposed to be simulated there. It doesn't have to all be one color. You might expect a little color difference between the faux stone keystones and other materials and the facade, but the blue and white is going to really stand out.
Tom, you looked at the paint palettes for this. It's kind of hard from how soft is the gray
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you were breaking up. I wasn't able to catch that.
You looked at the color palettes. Can you react?
Yeah, I did scan those in and send those as part of the packet, and obviously it's a little bit more difficult to get a sense of color on a scanned it from the screen. But the applicant did submit examples. It is I think a fairly soft gray color for the wall structure, and what I would suggest is that perhaps the applicant may be able to give a little bit more detail in the color selection process. So I can.
Yeah, that's my only reservation, Mr. Chairman, is that, but it so flies in the face of the guidelines that I would hate for that to get in the way of being able to support it, because I love everything they're doing there.
Sure.
Other than that,
no, I share the concern, particularly the sharp contrast with the navy and the white. I'd like to hear from other members on that.
Mr. Chairman, it's Alan. I would concur in that. I would need confirmation that certainly the colors used are all colors that are compliant with the template that is in design review. If the colors are compliant, I don't have a huge concern about how the applicant wishes to put them together, but we need to make sure that all those colors they're proposing to use are part of the template for downtown.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would agree with Alan on that too. As long as it's compliant, it would be fine with me.
Anyone else? Mr. Bickley, you want to respond?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, appreciate the opportunity. Yes, I would say the gray is certainly the main wall color, is a very soft gray. What we're calling the white, the Sherwin-Williams color, is actually called drift of mist, which is probably borderline more of a tannish tone than a pure white. It would mimic pretty closely what is actually on the building now that the existing EFIS color is. And then the dark navy color that is on the keystone is a nod to the actual signage and branding of the organization. So those are pulled together to kind of highlight what little features this building does have on that front facade. Those existing windows that we're calling white, or this drift of mist color, are built up from the wall plane itself, and then those keystone features are an additional build-up on that wall. So all of those items are just trying to highlight some of what minimal features we do have on that facade.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Bickley?
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I'm just trying to hold back here if anybody else had any thoughts. But I might ask, how important do they feel I see now, looking closely, is that I saw white and I took it to be white. I can see that it's more of a beige or off-white, and which I think is far more appropriate than white. And it would be even better if the window trim was painted along with the actual window frames, because those are white, and we keep having white window frames sneak in all over town, and they really kind of detract from the overall thing we're trying to accomplish. But it might be a good chance to do that. But think the keystones being the same color would be a huge improvement. And typically, I can see the cool idea of the branding and the colors, but it's not typically done to do it with the building facade itself. It starts becoming signage. So anyway, I'm still pretty uncomfortable with such an obviously, we're stimulating stone and then to paint it a kind of a almost primary color I don't think fits. The design review guidelines don't just address a color palette, but also how it's used, the way I read it. But anyways, sorry I got away from my question. Is this something that they can't live with anything else, or is this something where the client could say, yeah, maybe you have a point?
I certainly think it would be up for conversation with the client themselves. I know they were adamant about trying to highlight what little they could on this upper facade where they have minimal artistic features on the wall. And I will say too, just to make sure we're clear, I know the white window frames show up in this old picture, but those have since been replaced to the clear anodized, the silver tone that Tom had shown earlier in the presentation that was approved back in the June meeting.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts from members? Or do we have anybody ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I would move approval subject to review of the colors as with staff to ensure that they conform to the color palette as I think Alan suggested.
Okay. We have a second.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Berkey,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Mr. Zula,
Yes.
Mr. D'Elia,
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths,
Yes.
Commissioner Meinzer.
Yes.
It's 6 in favor.
Motion adopted. Congratulations, Mr. Bickley. I know you'll work with Tom and staff. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for your time.
Next on the agenda is 125 East Water Street. Mr. Horsman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will preface this saying the applicant, Mr. Brian Casper, is actually traveling today and has been unable to join the meeting today. So I told him I would present the application from staff's perspective. I would do my best to answer any specific questions as best I can, but just want to say the applicant's not able to attend today. We are all familiar with this building, though, the Bi-Miller building, currently home to Lake Erie Shores and Islands, as well as a couple of condominium units on the upper floors. It was originally constructed in 1866. Its status is a contributing building in our downtown historic district. So the most recent approval for this building happened in early 2019, where this commission approved many exterior alterations, including the addition of a penthouse level on the adjacent building at 131 East Water. In addition to that, the rooftop deck was approved for the top of the Bi-Miller building. Most of these additions have been completed. With the exception of the rooftop deck on the Bi-Miller building has not been constructed. This application sort of builds off that concept, except includes a structure which would be home to a public rooftop bar establishment that would be partially enclosed. It would rise 12 feet above the roof line of the building and would be set back, I believe, about 16 feet. And so here you can see the floor plan for the proposal. The applicants say the colors and materials plan to match those of the existing adjacent penthouse structure, which is a grayish color that was just meant to distinguish itself from the historic parts of the building. Staff, it does have a recommended condition, should the structure be approved, that final elevation drawings and material and color samples be submitted to staff, just to ensure that they meet what was submitted here. And of course, the structure would also need a permit from the building division, which would address any potential issues as to structure and feasibility of building and such. Also, the plan would be to connect this structure to the elevator shaft at the roof level above the adjacent building, which, as you can see, was shown on these elevation drawings from the previous approval. So that concludes my report, and we'll answer any questions the commission members have.
What questions do we have for Tom?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I guess my real only question is whether or not staff believes that this would constitute a permanent fixture on the building, or is this something that, if desired in the future, could be essentially taken down without significant structural changes to the building?
Yeah, that would be my assumption based on what was submitted, that this building would not significantly alter any of the historically important portions of the building, and that could be removed and would not do any detrimental negative effects to this old building. I neglected to mention, I put this in the report though, our guidelines don't speak specifically to these types of structures on top of historic buildings. If you look at the Secretary of the Interior standards, they generally try to discourage them on buildings that are usually under like 4 or fewer stories. I think we have been a little bit lenient on those standards in the past. Hotel Kilbourne, one example, the adjacent building being another example, probably due to the nature of the buildings overlooking the bay. And we do like to see them set back. We don't, I think the guidelines also make it clear it should not be built up in the same, it should be set back from the historic cornice of the building, which this is. So I just wanted to kind of make clear that our guidelines speak specifically to make sure additions are just not, are very clearly additions and not part of the original building, but they don't speak specifically to rooftop structures as this. So just for clarification.
And Mr. Chairman, just to follow up to what Mr. Horsman just said, I would be inclined, given the nature of our downtown and the nature of the waterfront, to be in favor generally of rooftop structures that are, quote, temporary in nature, unquote, from a perspective of the historical structure of the building. So personally, I'd be inclined to approve this, subject to the recommended conditions that staff have included.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I apologize. I was trying to chime in earlier. I just want to say that I'd be recusing myself from the discussion here. That's all I had.
I would concur with what Alan just said. I think if we get a motion, I would suggest to include, in addition to the staff recommendation, point that Alan is making, that future removal would not alter be done.
Mr. Chairman, your connection is breaking up again. I missed that.
I'll repeat again. I was concurring with Alan's assessment and concern about future removal of that structure not being detrimental to the building, and I would suggest that if we get recommendation to approve that in addition to your staff recommendation, we add that provision.
Mr. Chairman, I lost you halfway again with your connection. I just want to make sure I get the language for the addition of.
Mr. Horstman, through you, I think he's suggesting that we add a condition that any the building be able to be returned to its original condition should this structure be removed at any given point.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I tend to agree with both of you as well, long as it's, something that is not able to, long as it's able to be removed theoretically, and also that it doesn't try to mimic any of the historical features of the building, look as part of the building, along with the recommendation of staff getting final approval on color samples and things like that, that it doesn't, stand out or anything like that.
Any other comments? Somebody want to take a stab at a motion that includes all of that?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the application be approved subject to the conditions included in the staff report regarding elevation drawings and material and color samples being submitted for final approval, and that any structure that is removable in the sense that its removal doesn't permanently alter the historic structure of the building.
Second.
Thank you. Any other final discussions? Roll call, please.
Dr. Berkey?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Zuloff?
He's recused.
He's recused. Mr. Galea?
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths?
Yes.
And Commissioner Meinzer?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was muted. My response was no vote.
Right. Okay. And that passes with five affirmative votes.
Good.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the commission. I will ensure to work in coordination with the building division when this building permit comes through to ensure that that condition is satisfied.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for, as you stated earlier today, you're not ready to speak to amendments to the preservation ordinance. We'll get that next month, Tom?
Yeah.
So we're ready for staff updates.
So there's a few things that I wanted to update the commission on. I mentioned last meeting that our CLG performance evaluation
is now
underway.
Exiting.
That actually was an error from the SHPO office. It's a process that happens every 2 years, so we actually won't have to go through that until next year. So that was nice to hear. And just last week, the certified local government grant applications opened up. These are grants that cities such as Sandusky, who's a CLG, can apply for. And they have certain funding opportunities that are funding priorities that they can fund activities with a full grant without a local match, which considering the city's current budgetary situation is an attractive opportunity. So there's a few things, and so over the next month or two, I'll be working with the city manager and hopefully members of this commission to figure out. I think it's worthwhile for us to make an application to the SHPO office for a need that we think fits in line with that. For example, one of the funding priorities is a design review guideline update process. So if that's, that's like one example of something that could be funded through this. So I'll keep everyone updated, and we'll appreciate feedback from anybody as we go through that process and get the application submitted in February, so that we can hopefully get something funded through that. As of now, we have not received any November 2020 applications for the meeting next month. I have been in communication with a number of potential applicants, and it's possible they may be trying to get an application for the November meeting very shortly here, and I'll make sure to update the commission if that does happen. It should happen within the next week or so. That I potentially may be expecting one to come in, but other than that, we have not received any other applications. Finally, staffing updates internally here in the division or Department of Planning. As many of you know, our Chief Development Officer, Matt Lasko, who has been overseeing the planning department for the last few months, his last day is Friday, so he'll be leaving the city and taking over the city manager job in Huron. So for the time being, the planning department will be the lean staff of myself and Greg but Kristen comes back on Monday after maternity leave, so we'll be glad to have her back.
We get some relief.
Yes. So in the coming weeks and months, I think we'll be determining how to, what the structure of this department will be looking like. But for the meantime, I think things will be running as they are. Just wanted to make sure to update you all on what that staffing situation looks like. Those are all the updates I have from staff. So thank you.
Tom, do we know anything on 119 East Market? I'm hearing here and there bits and pieces from community members asking, as they watch the State Theater being secured for the winter weather, that building's still sitting there unsecured after the demolition process. Yes. Do we know anything?
Nothing concrete to make a formal report on. I will say that the city and the city manager and our development officer have been in regular communication with the building owners to rectify the situation and ensure that that building is stable. And so I don't have a specific plan or update to present, but it is something that's been under regular communication with city administration.
So they know we have a concern, and hopefully something's going to happen here soon. We have anything else? Any new items to discuss this evening? If not, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
We're adjourned. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.